Welcome, dear dreamer. Tonight we travel to a palace heavy with perfume and secrets, to a France torn in two, and to a queen who learned early that love, loyalty, and even her own body were not hers to control. But in time, she would turn it all, every betrayal, every whispered scandal, into power. Her name was Marguerite de Valois. She was the daughter of a queen, the sister of three kings, and soon the bride of a man who hated her. But for now, she is just a girl, and it's nearly time for her wedding. Let the world quiet. Let the gold curtains fall. Let the pageantry begin. You are drifting now into a story of silk, smoke, and strategy. And we begin, as many tragedies do, with vows. If you enjoy these quiet, scandalous journeys through history, tap like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for a new sleepy story every night. Paris, August 1572. Marguerite is 17. She wakes in a gilded bed under sheets laced with embroidery. Her hair is brushed until it shines. Her hands are folded in prayer. But her thoughts are elsewhere. She is to be married today, and she does not love the man. He is called Henri of Navarre, a clever, rough-edged prince from the south, a Protestant, a political risk, and now, by command of the crown, her husband. She didn't choose him. Her mother did, Catherine de Medici, the most powerful woman in France, and perhaps the most feared. Marguerite is her youngest daughter, beautiful, poised, obedient, and entirely expendable. The country is on the edge of civil war. Protestants and Catholics eye each other from across the pews and the battlefields. The court is tense. Every smile is a mask. Every prayer could be a trap. So Catherine arranges a union, a Catholic bride, a Protestant groom, to calm the violence, to show unity, to display in public what cannot be trusted in private. The wedding is held at Notre Dame. The city gathers, some to celebrate, some to protest, some just to watch history lean one way or another. Marguerite walks down the aisle in white and silver. Her hands are steady, her eyes do not flicker. She wears a veil that weighs nearly as much as her crown. Henri waits at the altar, pale, tense, surrounded by guards. He hesitates before giving his vow. His advisers whisper. Marguerite waits. Finally, someone presses his head forward. A nod. Barely there. But enough. The vow is complete, and Marguerite de Valois becomes Marguerite of Navarre. A wife, a symbol, a new pawn on a very old board. The feast is long. The smiles are false. And 3 days later, the streets of Paris turn red. The St. Bartholomew's Day massacre begins just after midnight. The gates are locked, and the killing begins. Thousands of Protestants are in the city for the wedding. Now they are hunted in their beds. The king, Marguerite's brother, gives the order, and the city obeys. Windows are shattered, bells are rung, blood runs into the gutters. Marguerite's new husband is among the targets, but she saves him. She finds him in the dark, pulls him into her chambers. When soldiers burst through the doors, she stands in their way, dressed in her nightgown, unarmed, unmoving. They hesitate and turn back. Marguerite does not weep. She does not scream. She simply waits until the city goes quiet again and the world once more pretends to be civilized. Weeks pass. Henri is forced to convert to Catholicism to save his life. Marguerite is kept at court, watched, guarded, doubted. And when the chaos settles, they are sent to the south, to the court of Navarre, to start a marriage neither of them wanted. But marriage does not make them allies. Henri ignores her, publicly, keeps company with others, leaves her alone at court, far from her family, far from power. But Marguerite learns quickly. She is not without resources. She has her wit, her name, her letters, and her charm. It begins quietly. A conversation in the garden, a shared glance in the corridor, an invitation left unanswered, until it is. She chooses carefully, not carelessly, never recklessly. Every admirer is a message, every rumor is a signal. She does not deny the gossip. She allows it to spread, like perfume on the air, because in a court where women are meant to obey and queens are meant to endure, Marguerite is learning how to survive, not by submission, but by attention. They call her dangerous. They say she's too beautiful, too clever, too free. And the more they speak her name, the more powerful she becomes. Let the candles burn low now. Let the palace fade. Let the voices grow quiet. You are not in her chamber. You are not in her marriage. You are simply watching from a distance as a queen begins to unfold, like smoke in a locked room. They will call her scandalous. They will say she took too many lovers, too many chances, too much control. But they will never say she was broken. They will never say she was small. And that, more than anything, is what they feared. Marguerite will not fade. Not yet. Not ever. This is only the beginning. Her revenge is not loud. It is slow, deliberate, soft as silk, sharp as glass. And it starts here, with a wedding in blood. Breathe in and out. The queen has taken her first step, and the story is only just beginning. You are still here, resting, and so is she, Marguerite, not just the Queen of Navarre, not just a princess of France, but a woman, left alone, and burning quietly. After the wedding, after the feast, the poison, the blood, there was no real honeymoon. Henri left her behind, again. He returned to the south, back to Navarre, back to his mistresses, back to the freedom he so deeply prized. Marguerite stayed at court, in Paris, in a palace that whispered behind her back. And at first she endured it all with the elegance expected of her. She was the daughter of a queen. She knew how to hold her tongue and lift her chin. She knew how to smile without flinching, how to glide through marble halls as if the ground wasn't cracking beneath her. But every woman has a breaking point. Hers began with loneliness, not the romantic kind, not the soft ache of missing someone, the deeper kind, the kind that hums in your bones, that stares back at you in polished mirrors. She had no husband beside her, no child to hold, no title of her own, just the borrowed weight of being someone's wife, someone's sister, someone's political tool. So she began to write letters and to take visitors, handsome ones, clever ones, dangerous ones. Some say she started sleeping with men in revenge. Others say she simply stopped apologizing, because the truth was, Henri had his lovers. Everyone knew it. So why couldn't she? But Marguerite, as always, did things her own way. She didn't hide. She didn't sneak around behind tapestries or in stables. She let the rumors walk in daylight. There was Joseph de Boniface de la Mole, a nobleman with soft features and sharper ideas. He visited often, stayed late, spoke to her in low tones about art and rebellion. There was Champfalon and others. The court whispered, and Marguerite listened, not with shame, but with calculation, because every whispered name attached to her was a rope tying her back into power. Every sigh and sideways glance was a reminder to the court she mattered. Even scandal was a kind of influence. But it was La Mole who mattered most, because La Mole wasn't just a lover, he was a conspirator. And Marguerite, carefully, cautiously, began to drift toward the fire of rebellion. She didn't start the plot against her brother, King Charles IX, but she didn't walk away from it either. She passed letters. She hosted meetings. She may have even delivered secret messages hidden in the hems of her gowns, all while sleeping beneath the same roof as her mother, Catherine de' Medici, the most dangerous woman in Europe. When the plot was uncovered, it was La Mole who paid the price. He was arrested, confessed, and killed. They sent his head to Marguerite in a velvet box. She opened it and said nothing. No scream, no wailing, just breath. And then, as ever, she moved forward. Because Marguerite had learned something. Love could not protect her. But scandal? Scandal could keep her name alive. She was no longer just a queen without a crown. She was a woman with a reputation. And in the French court, reputation was everything. Let the hallways grow still again. Let the voices quiet. Let the box with the head of her lover fade from sight. Let the candlelight grow low. You are not in that palace. You are not holding a letter sealed in wax. You are here, listening, resting, watching a queen become something more dangerous than royal. She is becoming unforgettable. And as the court watches her with suspicion, with envy, with desire, she begins to sharpen. Marguerite is done waiting for love. She will make her own alliances now, and her own rules. But the danger is just beginning, because soon she will be forced to choose obedience or freedom. And as we drift into the next part of our story, we'll follow her beyond the walls of the Louvre, into exile, into reinvention, into revenge. Breathe in and let it all go. You're drifting again toward candlelight, toward silence, toward the edge of a kingdom. And so is she, Marguerite, daughter of a queen, sister of kings, still a wife in name, but now something more complicated, something less obedient. Her name has grown heavy in the halls of court. There are whispers in the corners again. Too many visitors to her rooms, too many letters, too many men drawn to her presence. They say her voice carries influence, that her glance is worth more than coin, that her words travel farther than they should. And so they ask her to leave, not in chains, not in shame, but quietly. They call it a retreat, a visit, a change of scenery. But Marguerite knows better. They are removing her from the board, sending her far from Paris, far from power. They send her to a town called Agen. It's not a punishment exactly, but it is meant to make her disappear. The journey is long. She watches the hills pass by, the forests bend in the wind. She keeps her thoughts close, her face calm. She arrives not as a queen, but as a guest who is expected to do very little, and say even less. But Marguerite has never done well with silence. At first her days are simple. She walks the gardens, she reads, she listens to the air, and to the servants who speak just a bit too freely. And then once again, she begins to write soft letters, thoughtful letters, messages wrapped in silk ribbon, folded in neat lines, sealed with her mark. Some letters carry thanks, others carry news, and a few carry quiet promises. They are sent in all directions, north to Paris, south to Navarre, west to those who have not yet chosen sides. And slowly her home in Agen changes. It becomes something else, a place where men begin to visit, friends of old, allies of her family, young nobles curious about the woman who won't disappear. They speak with her, they laugh, they linger. Some become friends, some become confidants, a few become something more, not through declarations, just moments, softly shared conversations, glances held longer than expected, evening walks that don't end when they should. Marguerite does not offer explanations. She simply allows the stories to bloom on their own. And in doing so, she becomes part of the conversation again. A queen in exile, still remembered, still relevant, still powerful. But attention invites discomfort. And soon those in Paris begin to take notice. Her letters are traveling too far. Her visitors are staying too long. Someone suggests she is trying to influence politics. Another suggests she is gathering support. Another still says nothing at all, just watches. And one day, without warning, everything changes. Her circle narrows. Her invitations stop arriving. Her messengers are turned away. Her exile grows quieter. And Marguerite feels the stillness tighten, but she does not complain. She adjusts, moves to a quieter estate, somewhere safer, somewhere simpler. She walks alone again, watches the clouds, listens to the wind, and still she writes. Because writing is not just communication, it is presence. And even now her presence matters. Far away, her husband, Henri, is rising. He is no longer just the king of Navarre. He wants more. He wants to be king of France. But to do that, he needs her. He needs Marguerite, because her name is older than his. Her bloodline runs through the French throne, and her cooperation would make everything easier. He sends word, soft letters, kind requests. He suggests reconciliation. She reads the letters and sets them aside, because after years of being ignored, controlled, set aside, she finally holds something valuable, and she will not give it away lightly. Eventually, he offers her freedom, not the freedom to disappear, the freedom to choose land, security, her own home, and the one thing she wants most of all, to keep her title, Queen of France, forever. Let yourself drift now, just as she did. Let the shadows lengthen across her quiet chambers. Let the fire glow low. Let the silence be peaceful, not lonely. Because Marguerite is no longer lost. She is becoming something new, no longer a queen by accident, but one by design. She returns to Paris, not with fanfare, not with apology. She slips into the city like a rumor and settles into her own home, her own rhythm, her own world. Visitors come again, not as subjects, not as suitors, but as guests of a woman who has nothing to prove, and everything still within reach. She writes more now, pages and pages, not just letters, but her memories, her account, her version of the truth. She names no one directly, but everyone knows who she means. The lovers, the betrayals, the choices she made, and why. It is not a confession, it is a reclamation. Her story, told on her terms. And slowly, something remarkable happens. The laughter around her name softens. The whispers lose their sting. The scandal becomes legend, not shameful, just unforgettable. Let the candle burn a little lower now. Let the pages turn in the breeze. Let the queen rest in her chair by the window, wrapped in soft velvet, her ink drying slowly beside her. You are not in her study, but you are close enough to feel her presence, the calm, the clarity, the quiet control. Marguerite has weathered exile and returned not as a shadow, but as a woman fully formed. Her power is not loud. It doesn't need to be, because the court remembers, and so do you. But for now, just breathe. The queen is still writing. The court is far away now. So is the exile, the carriage, the cold silence of distant castles. Marguerite has returned, not to power exactly, but to something better. Freedom, a home of her own, a chamber where no one knocks unless she wishes them to. She is no longer trying to win the game. She is playing it by different rules. Her own. And the court still watches her, still whispers, because even now no one knows quite what to do with her. She's not a queen with a crown. She's not a wife. She's not a danger. Exactly. But she is still beautiful, still connected, still desired, and very much awake. It begins again with invitations. A few young men, noble, educated, curious. They come to her rooms. They speak softly. They bring her books, letters, music. She listens, she smiles, and occasionally she asks them to stay, not with words, just with silence, just with presence. And they do. She doesn't hide her company. She lets the servants carry trays of wine through the hallway, lets them see the slippers beside the fire that are not her own. She does not rush anyone out in the morning. They leave when they are ready, or when she is. There is no shame in it, because this is not about love, and it is not about lust. It is about balance. For every man who ignored her, she now welcomes one who waits for her word. For every time she was used, she now chooses, and she begins to enjoy the quiet power of it. One guest, a poet, writes verses about her hands. Another, the son of a duke, begins arriving earlier, staying later. He brings her letters from the court, names, rumors, warnings. She thanks him with a smile, and he returns the next day. She does not promise anyone exclusivity, but they rarely ask for it. They know what they are part of. They know who she is, not a lover to keep, a queen to orbit. There is talk, of course. The rumors never stopped, but they've changed tone now. There is admiration, even envy laced in the whispers. She is no longer just scandalous. She is untouchable, too bold to punish, too elegant to accuse. Even her husband, now King Henri IV, leaves her alone. Their marriage is dissolved, but her title remains Queen of France, because he knows Marguerite is more valuable unbroken than discarded. And if she chooses to make companions of half the noble houses of France, let her. It keeps her close and keeps everyone else guessing. Let your thoughts drift for a moment. You are not in her room, but you can hear the music from the next chamber. A lute played softly, two voices laughing over a chessboard, a wine glass placed gently on stone. It is not wild, it is not dangerous. It is deliberate, measured. Marguerite does not chase. She allows, and the ones who enter her circle know. They are not there by accident. Each guest gives her something, a name, a favor, a bit of information they shouldn't have shared. And when they leave, they speak of her only carefully, if at all, because no one wants to be the one who's forgotten. She builds loyalty not through fear, but fascination. She doesn't demand silence, she earns it. She begins receiving gifts, a carved box from Venice, a necklace from a former rival, a portrait of her, seated, eyes half lowered, the brushwork soft and reverent. She never acknowledges the gifts aloud, but she keeps them. She lets them sit in view, so that when her next guest arrives, they understand. You are not the first. You will not be the last. But you are welcome, for now. Her revenge is not in one single act. It is in a rhythm, a presence, a steady turning of the tide. She was once ignored, abandoned, cast aside. Now she decides who matters and for how long. There is one man, older, respected, who comes to ask her favor in a court dispute. She listens, calm, still. He flatters her. She smiles. He returns again, brings a poem, then a ring, then a secret, and finally she gives him what he wants. Not her affection, her endorsement, a quiet word passed to the right ears. He gets what he asked for, and tells everyone it was her influence that made it happen. And so, they keep coming, not just for pleasure, but for possibility. Let the room grow softer now. Let the curtains drift. Let the hallway beyond her chambers grow quiet. You are not holding a letter. You are not one of the ones waiting for her door to open. You are just here, drifting, watching, understanding that what they once called scandal, she has made into art. What they once called weakness, she has turned into leverage, and all without lifting her voice. She does not ask for apologies. She does not need them. She has rebuilt her power in the quietest way, in the one space no one expected her to own, the private, the personal, the whispered. And now she is more dangerous than ever, because she no longer wants revenge. She already has it. Breathe in and let the past settle behind you like dust on velvet. The queen is still awake, not with urgency, but with awareness. Each moment in her chamber is a choice now, each name on her lips a possibility. Marguerite has learned how to be still, how to let others move around her, because now they orbit her. One by one they arrive, not all at once, never in crowds. She prefers space, control, but each man, each visitor serves a purpose. Some stay for conversation, some stay for an evening, a few for longer. And now people begin calling them something else. Not lovers, not courtiers, but favorites, because they are chosen. And being chosen by Marguerite means everything. One is a philosopher. He reads aloud to her in the evenings, ideas wrapped in soft Latin syllables. She listens with half-lidded eyes, sipping honeyed wine draped in shadow. He teaches her new ways to think. She teaches him new ways to listen. He does not stay long, but he leaves changed. Another is a soldier, broad-shouldered, thoughtful, surprisingly gentle. He says little, watches everything. He walks with her through the garden, hand lightly at the curve of her elbow. She calls him Stormlight, though never to his face. He becomes a quiet guardian, a presence, a wall between her and the noise of the world. When he leaves for his next post, she sends him with a silk ribbon, knotted 3 times. and never speaks of him again. There is a musician. There is always a musician. This one plays a small harp, the strings delicate and strange. He writes pieces for her, full of longing and moonlight, and when he plays them, she listens with her eyes closed, as if remembering something that hasn't happened yet. But among them all, there is one who stays longer than the rest. His name, carefully unrecorded. Even her letters refer to him only as the quiet flame. He is clever, patient, well connected. He makes himself useful, and in doing so, becomes necessary. He smooths tensions with nobles. He carries notes between households. He brings her news before it's public, and laughter before it's needed. People begin to assume things, and Marguerite lets them. But she never gives him her heart, because she learned too long ago. To give someone your heart is to give them the knife. She gives gifts instead, not promises. Never that, but favors, referrals, soft mentions, introductions in candlelight. Each man who enters her world leaves with something a little brighter than when he arrived, and each becomes a thread in the tapestry she's weaving, not for affection, for influence, because the court watches her still, even without a throne, even without a husband. They wonder what she knows, who she favors, what she wants. And Marguerite, she gives them just enough to keep wondering. Let the chamber grow still now. Let the harp stop playing. Let the wine glasses rest half full on silver trays. You are not her guest. You are not her favorite. You are only passing by, floating through the hush of her memory, watching as she rebuilds a court of her own, built not from laws or armies, but glances, and scent, and secrets. One evening she hosts a small gathering. 5 guests, all men, all from different parts of the court, different alliances, different ambitions. They think it's a salon, a quiet night of poetry and wine, and it is. But also, it's something more. She's watching how they speak, who interrupts whom, who defers, who brags. By the time they leave, she knows which one is useful, which one is dangerous, which one will return, and which one she'll invite back, alone. This is not revenge in the old way. No daggers, no outbursts. This is slower, wiser. This is a queen who knows that to be desired is to be powerful, and to be desired by many is to never be cornered. Some of her guests fall in love with her. She does not encourage it, but she does not discourage it either. She lets them leave with their illusions intact. Because sometimes what a man believes you gave him is more useful than what you actually did. And all the while she writes more memoirs, more letters. She writes about the way the candlelight falls on certain faces, about the names people speak too quietly, about the men who believed she belonged to them, and how wrong they were. She writes not to confess, but to remember, because even power fades, but story endures. You're still with her, not beside her exactly, but close enough to feel the hush that follows her footsteps, close enough to sense that this isn't just survival anymore. This is orchestration, because Marguerite has turned scandal into currency. Every name whispered beside hers, every man seen entering her home after dark, every lover rumored but never confirmed, it all has value, and she spends it wisely. The court keeps talking. They say she's had dozens. Some say more, but no one can list them all. Because not every visit ends in intimacy, and not every intimacy leaves evidence. Some she truly desired, others she simply allowed. Because Marguerite had learned something that few women were ever permitted to know. Desire, when chosen, is power. She never pretended to be virtuous, never played the game of denial. If someone asked her directly, which they rarely dared, she would smile. Not a coy smile, not a guilty one, just unreadable. And in that pause, in that silence, she gained more power than any confession could ever give her. One evening, at a gathering of nobles, a duke leans too close. He lowers his voice and says her name with a grin. He thinks he's charming. He thinks she'll be flattered. She does not pull away. She just turns her eyes slowly toward him and says, "Only speak of what you've seen with your own eyes." He falls quiet and never tries again. That's the beauty of her revenge. She never needed to scream. She never needed to accuse. She simply lived, boldly, deliberately, in a way they weren't prepared to face. And in doing so, she made every whisper about her a kind of surrender. Even when they tried to insult her, they only made her legend bigger. She chooses who is remembered. Some names she repeats in her memoirs, others she leaves in the dark, not as a kindness, but as control. Because nothing unsettles men more than being forgotten by the woman they once thought they owned. Her visitors don't stop. There are always new faces, some young, some older. Some come with petitions, hoping her favor might tilt a decision at court. Some bring poetry, some bring secrets, and some come just to be seen at her side, if only for an hour. Because by now to be close to Marguerite is to be part of a living myth. Let yourself drift now. You are not one of them, not someone waiting in the antechamber, hands trembling with a folded letter. You are only here, watching, listening, as a queen turns her lovers into instruments and her reputation into a shield. There's a diplomat from Florence, smooth, careful, with eyes that say too much. He calls on her 3 times before she allows him to stay longer than 10 minutes. He brings wine from his family's estate. She thanks him, but doesn't pour it. Eventually he earns an evening. He boasts later, gently, to others. But she never confirms it. And when he sends another letter asking to return, she never replies. He fades into silence, just as she intended. Because sometimes revenge is not fire. Sometimes it is absence. Sometimes it is showing someone they were not worth remembering. Not every man who enters her orbit is used, but none of them are accidents, even the kind ones, even the poets. Because every name tied to her is another piece of the story she's weaving. A story of a woman not ruined by love, but ruling through it. Her brother, the new king, tries to reframe her narrative. He speaks softly about her in public, as if she were past, tamed, tired. But those who know better. They see the men still visiting, still waiting, still hoping, and they see her, unbothered, unclaimed, entirely in control. Let her sit now, in her chair by the window, her hair unbound, a glass of something dark and sweet at her side. There's a note on the table, unopened. She knows who sent it. She'll read it when she feels like it. Or not. That's the true scandal. Not that she had lovers, but that she never apologized for them, that she never belonged to any of them, that she could walk away whenever she wished, and still remain herself, respected, remembered, resilient. The court tries still to define her. They debate numbers, try to trace timelines, try to categorize who she loved, who she used, who she ruined. But Marguerite is beyond counting now. She is not a scandal to be explained. She is a force to be absorbed, to be spoken of only in lowered voices, or not at all. Sleep now. She is still there, behind her shutters, laughing quietly with someone no one will ever name. Because her revenge is still unfolding. And in the end, no one will be able to say whether it was love or strategy. They only know she won. Let the night settle softly. Let the firelight flicker low. You are still with her, though she may not notice. Because tonight, she's writing and remembering, not because she misses the past, but because she owns it now. The scandal, the choices, the men, all of it. She doesn't hide anything anymore, and she's about to ensure no one else can either. Because the Queen is writing her memoirs, and in every line there is quiet revenge. Marguerite de Valois is no longer young, but she is not old. She is sharpened. Years of court politics, years of exile and survival, years of lovers, taken, left, remembered, forgotten. And through it all, she has held on to one thing, the right to tell her own story. It begins with a few pages, descriptions of her childhood at court, the smell of the halls, the way her mother, Queen Catherine de' Medici, measured power like it was perfume, always lingering, never poured too heavily. She writes about her brothers, Charles, the fragile king, with bursts of rage and quiet terror. Henri, the next one, more composed, but full of fear behind the eyes. She writes about her marriage to Henri of Navarre, how she was used, offered up in the gamble of political peace, how the night of her wedding became the night of the St. Bartholomew's Day tragedy. She does not write in anger, she writes in detail, which is worse, because the calm voice of a witness is harder to dismiss. And then she begins to write about the men, not by slandering them, but by remembering them exactly as they were. She names Joseph de la Mole, her lover and co-conspirator, and describes his letters, his charm, his fate. She doesn't dwell on how the court turned on him. She just leaves enough for the reader to feel it, to know what was lost. She writes about Chambellan, the soldier who stood beside her when others fled, and about the men in Agen who underestimated her and learned otherwise. She never writes explicitly. There are no crude details, no breathless retellings, just impressions, silhouettes of relationships, glimpses of how they mattered and how they didn't, how some tried to control her, how some offered alliance, how she always kept part of herself untouched. Even when she was most vulnerable, her writing shocks the court, because no queen, no woman of her rank, had ever written like this before. Not about herself, not without shame. She isn't just recounting scandal, she's reframing it, turning whispers into testimony. And she does it all with a pen and perfect memory. People begin reading in secret. Noble women pass pages under tables. Princes pretend not to be interested. But they all read, because inside the memoir is something rare. A woman who was desired by many, used by some, and still ended up the one telling the story. Marguerite doesn't name every lover, but she implies enough. The memoir is like a mirror. Everyone who looks into it sees something different. Some recognize themselves, some fear they might be mentioned next, and a few begin visiting her again, hoping to influence what she might write. She welcomes them and listens, but the ink has already dried. Let the candles burn lower now. Let the page turn softly. You are not in her study. You are not reading over her shoulder, but you can feel it, the weight of the truth finally spoken, the calm revenge of being remembered exactly as you were. She publishes the memoir in 1628, the Memoires de Marguerite de Valois, the first autobiography ever written by a woman of the French court. It spreads faster than anyone expects, and with it, her reputation transforms. Again, no longer just a queen consort, no longer just a woman of lovers. Now, a writer, a voice, a witness to the century. She writes about the politics of marriage, how she was traded like currency. She writes about her choice not to remarry, about negotiating the annulment with Henri IV, calmly, strategically. She describes how she asked to keep the title Queen of France, and how he agreed, not out of love, but because he had no better offer. She includes that fact delicately, but no one misses the meaning. Her revenge by now is not just personal, it's cultural, because she knows the one thing more powerful than scandal is story, and hers is a masterpiece. The young women of the court begin to see her differently, not as a warning, as a possibility. She becomes a quiet symbol of survival, of agency, of a kind of freedom not easily won. They begin writing more letters, making more choices, refusing more orders, and the men begin to wonder if every woman they've underestimated might be writing too. Let the queen rest now, her quill beside her, the pages drying. She has nothing left to prove, only more truth to share when she chooses. The palace is quiet now, the halls cool, the candles low. Marguerite's name no longer echoes like scandal, because by now everyone understands she is not to be erased, and no one, not even a king, will ever tell her story for her. Let's pause at the edge of her salon. The door is cracked, the curtains ripple. Inside, voices speak low. One man, one woman. He is young, new to court, nervous. She is not. She leans slightly toward him, chin resting on her hand, listening. Not interrupting, just watching him gently unravel. This is not seduction. It is something finer, the art of interest. Marguerite has made interest into influence, again and again, and she is still perfecting it. By now she has had lovers from every corner of court, princes, scholars, ambassadors, a bishop, some whisper, a famed physician, others say. Not all were true, but Marguerite never corrected the lies that made her stronger. If a man claimed her, and it raised her power, she allowed the rumor to live. If it didn't, she killed it with silence. Her revenge has never been about exposure. It's been about control. And with every passing year, her control deepens. After her memoir was published, she noticed something. Men who once ignored her wrote letters of apology. Not in those words, of course, but that's what they were. They wanted to be remembered well. They offered compliments, clarifications, generosities. She accepted them, the ones that amused her, and filed the others away. Because forgiveness for her is a tool, not a duty. There's one name, you won't find it in history books, that stayed with her the longest. A man from her youth, not a courtier, not famous, but clever. She remembered how he made her laugh during a winter she would rather forget. Years later he returned, older, quiet, widowed. They spent 3 weeks together. Long walks, long talks, no titles, no court, just stillness. Then he left, and she didn't stop him. That too was power. Now Marguerite rarely takes lovers in the old sense, but the myth remains. Visitors still come, some with gifts, some with poetry, some hoping for something more, and she gives them what she chooses. Sometimes a kiss on the cheek, sometimes a whisper of advice that changes their fate. Sometimes nothing at all. And even that is treasured, because by now even being turned away by Marguerite is a kind of distinction. Let yourself float through her rooms again. Silks hang from the walls. A vase overflows with fresh-cut flowers. Books lie open. A lute rests beside the window. This is not the home of a woman hiding from her past. It is the home of someone who arranged her past into a gallery, one only she can curate. There is no king now, telling her what to say, no brother monitoring her steps, no marriage to bind her. And yet her name appears in every conversation that matters, because when people speak of power, they still speak of her, not loudly, but carefully, like she might hear them. And she might, because her reach is quiet and deep. There's a story that still makes the rounds in salons, always whispered, never printed, that one of her former lovers betrayed her, said something careless to the wrong person at court, and the next week he found his patronage mysteriously withdrawn, his allies silent, his name softly fading. They say Marguerite never spoke of it, never acknowledged it, but after that no man ever spoke her name carelessly again. She doesn't raise her voice, she doesn't send threats, she simply waits, and things correct themselves. This is how she wins, not with armies, with patience, with memory, and with reputation, the kind that walks into a room before you do and stays long after you leave. Let her sit now, at her desk, the window open, the night air brushing her shoulder. She's writing again, not a memoir now, letters, advising a young cousin, responding to a foreign queen, encouraging a poet who reminds her of someone she once knew. This is not retirement, it's legacy. Some say she should have remarried. She had offers, from noble houses in Italy, from widowed kings, but she declined them all. Why? Because she had already seen what it meant to be traded for politics. She would not be anyone's queen again. She was hers. There are women who visit her now, daughters of nobles, young wives, widows. They come with questions. She answers some, smiles through the rest. They ask how she survived so much scandal. She tells them the truth. I didn't survive it, she says. I made it work for me. And then softly, scandal only matters if you're ashamed of it. You are not in her salon, but you are near. You can hear the laughter. And no, she is not alone. Not ever. She has shaped her story, not into perfection, but into truth. And that is the finest revenge of all. Let the palace fall away now. Let the past dim like candlelight behind a curtain. By the time the century turned, Marguerite was something rare, a woman who had been scandal and outlived it, not by cleaning her name, but by letting it stay written, by turning rumor into reputation. She had been called too many things, too bold, too vain, too curious, too generous with her affections, but never irrelevant, never uninteresting, and never powerless. In her final years she lived not in exile but in elegance. A grand hotel in the heart of Paris, a courtyard filled with lilacs, a library of her own, windows that opened onto gardens, not judgment. There were still visitors, old lovers now softened by age, young nobles raised on her name like it was legend, women who came not to flatter her, but to learn. She greeted them all with warmth, but she did not give herself away any more, not in flirtation, not in apologies, not even in legacy, because by now she had already shaped it. The men who once dismissed her? Gone. The husbands and brothers who tried to control her? Gone too. And Marguerite? Still dressed in velvet? Still writing with a steady hand? Still laughing? But only when she meant to. She had made herself untouchable, not by being perfect, by being undeniable. Let yourself drift now, just beyond the curtain of her chamber. The candles are lit, but low. She sits by the fire, a letter in her lap, a goblet near her hand. She's alone, but she's not lonely. She hasn't been for a long time, because she learned what most never do, that choosing yourself is the only choice that never asks for permission. Her final lovers were not men. They were ideas, freedom, reflection, legacy. And Paris, for all its gossip, had to admit something at last. She was never just a queen. She was never just a scandal. She was Marguerite, the woman who said yes to herself, who was revered for her charm, her wit, her mind, and yes, for her history. All of it, even the parts no one could quite believe, especially those. That is the legacy of Marguerite de France, and it echoed long after the candles were blown out. Let yourself rest now. Let the curtain close. Let the footsteps fade down the marble corridor. She is gone, but not gone, because you just followed her story from start to finish. And you know now, this wasn't a tale of ruin. It was a story of reclamation, of scandal turned into strength, of desire used as armor, of revenge done without ever raising her voice. She didn't get even. She got everything. Remember her, Marguerite, the queen who got revenge by sleeping with everyone and forgetting none of it, not even herself. So close your eyes, rest deeper, and sleep now. Good night, dear dreamer.